stuff in the book. I really do love you.
We have a nice way of closing. Oh, man. I was expecting a bigger crowd. Holy crap. My name's Joe. I'm an alcoholic. This is going to be tough to get through this tonight. Some of the most important people in my life are here tonight, and so I want to give some thanks here, first of all, to the committee. And this is a special event. You can feel how much you all love this thing and love being here. You can feel it, and we've been swept up this weekend. The speakers we're so lucky to be here and sharing this with you guys. And I didn't want, normally I don't get too nervous because I'm too oblivious. My wife says I'm on the spectrum. To me, spirituality is just raising my consciousness where other people exist. Right. Steve, don't worry, relax. I'm going to try and keep it on the rails here. We've already had the two talks today, one from Joe and one from Sue, that were talking, that had bowel movements in it. I'm going to try and keep it away from that topic. Man, I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say tonight. I hope it's not my turn to be an idiot. I do that a lot. And I'm good at it. But I want to read something because, these men that are in this room, I can't help say it, and I want to thank the speakers that have gone on before me and the ones that will go on afterwards. And Tommy last night was fabulous, and then Joe and Georgia this afternoon. Joe C., if you like that workshop, I'm the Joe C. If you didn't like it, he's over there. And then Sue this afternoon, what a great, powerful Al-Anon talk that was. And then tomorrow we have Bob, and who else do we have here? Rick and Heidi, and who else? Amy? Tammy, that's right, Tammy, thank you. Keep me on track, all right? I get lost a lot, so I'm going to go, where was I? A lot. And but the men in this room were so special in my life. They've not only watched me grow up, they helped me grow up. John and Renee, what a fabulous job they're doing as hosting this thing. Do you know, I can't remember how long ago it was, 10 years ago? My son was homeless and he was on the street. And he called me one of the coldest nights of the year and raining in North Florida. And he said, Dad, I'm done. I need help. And I had thrown thousands and thousands of dollars at his illness. And it was getting worse. And it was about 9:30 at night, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking. I think he was probably 24, 25 at the time. And I don't know where it came from, but I just said, Joey, I've done everything I can. It's making you worse, not better. You know where the help is. And I hung up the phone. And it broke my heart. Those of you that have children that are out there, or grandchildren that are out there, it's a pain that you can't close your eyes. It's tattooed on the back of your eyelid. And my sponsor says we're only doing as well as our worst child is doing. So I called some guys to help feel sorry for me. And John was one of the guys I called. And he'll probably be embarrassed of this, but this is Alcoholics Anonymous. This is old-fashioned Alcoholics Anonymous. We read about it in the books. And he called me the next day and he says, does your son have a phone number? I said, yeah. They could be homeless, but they got smartphones and $100 sneakers. And he comes and he calls me back a little while later and he says, I want you to know that your son is flying up here to Maryland. And I'm going to put him in my basement. I'm going to take him through the 12 steps. And of course, he didn't tell Renee that. He just showed up, and they had 3 younger kids. And he put this 25-year-old kid in their basement, and he lived there a year. And unfortunately, he left, and he didn't stay sober. But he is in a sober living house right now, just celebrated 7 months. And I finally am just being a dad. That's a hard thing to do. You know, if you're a parent. God, it's a hard thing to do, to not mess with it. Anyway, I feel pretty good. Everybody told me how good I look. I get to move around virtually undetected amongst normal people today because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't want to do this. Normally I don't get nervous, but I gave a hell of a talk last night in bed. I wish you could have heard it. And my wife, she kept saying, I didn't get any sleep. You kept turning around and twisting. Yeah, you guys were a tough audience last night. I don't know how I get into these things. He's just a blowhard that doesn't say no. That's really all the truth is. I am an alcoholic as described in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't care what you say. I'm taking this jacket off because it's a bit warm up here. So quit breathing. I want to read something that I loved, and it reminded me of you. And because I thought last night after I prayed, and I realized I'm not trying to impress anybody. Well, I am, but but that's not really why any of us are here. I'm here to tell our story. Your story is my story. That's all it is. Any one of you could be up here. And there's a reading in one of my meditation books that I love to read, and it's great for all of you in this room because there's so many special people here. It's extraordinary how extraordinary the ordinary person is. At our meetings, we often hear of stories of the courage of ordinary people and their triumphs against great odds. When we hear of a person's life being restored, we are witness to miracles. Our friends are heroes, and so are we. As a man describes this passage from insanity to recovery, we are moved. Whenever we are truly open to knowing the people around us, whether at a meeting or in getting to know a neighbor, we will see heroism. It's amazing that when we get to know most people and hear what their lives have been like, we find so much to admire and respect. It's a privilege to have such friends. It is amazing they are so abundant when we open ourselves to them. God truly does speak to us through others. And I found that to be true. My nose tends to run when I speak. I'm allergic to BS. I'm the only one talking, right? All right. Did I say I'm Joe? I'm an alcoholic? Okay, I'll probably repeat myself a lot. My sobriety date is September 12th, 1990. And I'd love to tell you I'm grateful, but I'm blessed beyond my ability to be grateful. That's the truth. I know when everybody, I'm so great, I wish I could say that. I get that feeling every once in a while, but it's really, so much has happened. And not from the beginning. I was not a willing participant in this thing. As you will hear. And my story might be a little different. I didn't surrender to get sober. I surrendered to the disease of alcoholism and was defeated. But I'm an alcoholic as described in the big book, an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. And, I don't know. Our book, I love in the doctor's opinion, it says we're maladjusted to life, in full flight from reality, and outright mental defectives. This may be true to some extent. I'd like to know how to some extent you are those qualities or character defects. Well, I know that that's true in my case because as a kid, I didn't quite process things the way normal people process them. When I did something wrong, it wasn't that I did something wrong. I always felt I was wrong. And when I felt I know, Tammy, I'm going to try and hurry up. By the way, my beautiful and lovely wife, I would not be here if it wasn't for her. And she's my second and third wife in sobriety. She was so close to it, getting away, man. She's a fighter. Oh, I reel her in. And I love her dearly, and she is the spiritual backbone of our family, and we have a wonderful family today. Where was I? No, Billy, pay attention. So I didn't process things the way normal people process them, and when you do that, she'll tell me, don't get stuck in second grade. Second grade was a good year. It was a year I discovered sex. Now, I didn't know I was alone. I didn't know you were supposed to do it with other people. And I didn't even know what it was called. I didn't know there was a name for it, right? But it's one of those things when you get caught, and I got caught. I get caught at everything. I love the Al-Anon speaker was talking about her husband, and she says, he still lies. Meaning us, right? And now, I used to be a world-class liar. World-class. I still lie, but I suck at it today, man. And so, anyway, I got caught at it, right? And when you get caught, they ask what are you doing? I got that question a lot in my life. What in the hell are you doing? Or what were you thinking? And, right? And of course, I said what I was doing, and why? Well, it feels good. And the response that most parents would give is, don't ever let me see you doing that again. I took that literally. They just never saw me doing it again. And see, when you do that, you become a sneak and you start to go underground. And little by little, you start doing things and you start getting afraid. And I had that experience a lot growing up, that I would say things or do things and you would get reactions from people that all of a sudden, conversation stoppers. Now, we do that a lot. We do it in AA, but we love those conversations. And normal people aren't like it. We have our own language here, right? I mean, I better pay attention to the time. God forbid. Don't worry, this is going to be over in a few hours. Us people in AA, you can't get us out of the bar at closing time, but God forbid the speaker goes over at a meeting. Jesus could be talking and he'll be going, Lord. So, where was I? No. No. Behave over there, Rick. So anyway, and I didn't know what the problem was. I thank God for alcohol. I thank God for alcohol because it probably saved me from suicide growing up. There's so many years went by and I was always pretending to be somebody, whoever I was with, and trying to fit in. And until finally, one day I remember kind of in my late teens, God, I wish somebody would tell me what's wrong with me. Why does this stuff keep happening to me? Why do I keep getting in trouble? But, and then of course, being a typical alcoholic, we drink because we like the effect produced by alcohol. We have twin boys, and when they were going to high school, they were just starting high school, and the peer pressure, if you're young, the peer pressure is incredible today, right? So I told our twins, I said, both your mom and I are alcoholics. By the way, she's celebrating 25 years. Tammy's celebrating 25 years this month. And so I said, both your parents are alcoholics. You may have the gene. Let me tell you what to look for in case you might be one of us. I said, if you find that when you experiment, because you're probably going to experiment, if you find when you experiment that you like it more than your friends, you may be one of us. Because I loved it. Right away, it did the trick, right? And that was it. Game was on. It became like the main event. When are we going to do this again? And I got in trouble. And I didn't know I had alcoholism. When I got here, got here 5 days before my 40th birthday. I got sober 5 days before my 40th birthday. Never been to AA, never met anybody in AA, never been to detox or treatment. So I had no clue what any of this stuff was. I had no clue about the phenomenon of craving or the obsession of the mind. And I just knew, and when I got here, I would have thought I was a drug addict, really, because alcohol really was a gateway drug for me. And here's what happened. I used to drink, and I would always, did anybody here ever overshoot the mark? I would always overshoot the mark. Tonight I am not going to throw up in the bar, right, while I'm talking to somebody, because you're trying to hold it in. And I would throw up every night, and what number do I have to stop at? But you can't stop. I didn't know I couldn't stop. And I would always throw up. And no matter how hard I tried. So I had that phenomenon of craving. Now, luckily, I found out there's medication you can take. It's called cocaine. And the problem with that is that now you start drinking to alcohol poisoning. Right? You're drinking for 3-4 days, and you can consume vast quantities of alcohol. And you get like a car running with no oil and no water in the radiator. About the fourth day, you're overheating and the engine's shutting down. And so I did that for as long as I could stand it, and my body wouldn't take it anymore. I said, I got to do something to taper off all this stuff. So I tried a little experiment. I tried a little social crack smoking. I only smoked crack once. It was for 8 years. Now, listen, I don't mean to offend anybody if you're sensitive about drugs. Okay, I am an alcoholic. I believe in our singleness of purpose. But if you're one of these old timers who's never done any drugs, too bad, it's too late. Tried to get my sponsor to try a little crack. Just for a frame of reference, Said, Frank, you want to see the phenomenon of craving on steroids? Try this. And anyway, I'll give you a quick drunk-a-log. This is it, because we've heard a lot, and I'm going to try and get into some recovery. But so many things have happened in recovery. It's been an amazing journey. But here's how I drank. I don't know how you drank. I don't stop, I run out. I never once said to anybody, Rick, do you got any Tupperware? I want to put this crack cocaine away for the weekend. Never. And I don't stop, I run out. I have to get caught. Something has to happen. Blue lights in the rearview mirror. The boss is going to fire me. She's going to throw me out. Judge is going to sentence me. Something has to happen, and then I have a moment of clarity, and I'm going to stop. And I don't understand the symptoms. It's just a vicious cycle over and over again in my life. And I'm not talking about the fun years. Look, the book says for most alcoholics, drinking means companionship, conviviality, a colorful imagination, of freedom from care, boredom, and worrying, a feeling that life is good. That's what it was. That's why we're here. I want to recapture that 8 minutes over and over and over again. Right? And we never do quite get there. We get close. That's why I think I do it over and over again. Oh, I got so close last night. And, and the song changes that we sing. In the beginning, it was a phenomenal thing. We'd get drunk and it would enable me to do things I couldn't do. Like I had a couple shots before I came up here, or I wouldn't have been able to. No, just kidding. Just kidding. But it would, and you'd wake up in the morning and you'd be calling somebody and say, man, do you know what I did last night? Because there was adventures going on in the last years. Because it also says this there. It says, but it was not so with us in those last days. And in those last days, I would come to, and God knows where, and I would say those exact same words, but they had a whole different connotation. I would say, God, do you know what I did last night? If you're new in this room, welcome. I know what you did. I know what you did at 4 o'clock in the morning when nobody was watching and you were lonely or you needed another drink. And or you just needed some company or some validation. I know what you did, because I did it. Welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a place nobody punished me when I got here. I was expecting to be punished. And nobody punished me, and I haven't been punished since. I've done some punishable things in sobriety, but I haven't been punished. This magic that happened for me, and it went away, and we spiraled down. We never spiral up; we always spiral down. And I always worked menial jobs that would pay cash, so I could go out at night and party. So you always got. This way, I would have to get up and go to work. I thought it was a self-starter. But let me tell you where alcohol and drugs took me. That was I remember when I met my sponsor, and I posed this question to you, he posed it to me. I met my sponsor fresh out of a 6-month treatment center for indigents in Miami. And he asked me a question. He said, haven't you tried, we were riding down the street one day, he said, haven't you tried your best your whole life to be happy and as successful as you can be? And I thought about it, and I said, well, yeah, I guess I have. He said, well, you suck at it. If you got to AA, you suck at it. Right? And it doesn't matter what material things you have. This is an internal illness. This is a spiritual illness. And like I said, I'd never been to AA, detox treatment center. I knew nothing about Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew nothing about alcoholism, the illness, and what it looked like. And what happened was I don't remember my first sober day. I don't remember a hell of a lot about September 12th, 1990. I remember a hell of a lot about September 11th, 1990. That was a bad day. Maybe the day before you got here was a bad day. Right? Rick just celebrated an anniversary yesterday. I bet July 3rd, 1990 was a bad day, or 1991 was a bad day. So, and this is what it looked like. This is where my best effort to be happy and successful had taken me. I was in a Skid Row motel room in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, with my 2-year-old son and his mom. The only thing that I owned was a crib in this motel room. If Child Welfare Services would have walked in the door, I would have been arrested for child neglect. This little boy was in that crib in filthy diapers and had a bottle that used to have milk in it, but it was just cloudy water because I kept watering it down. See, I'm one of those alcoholics. I quit. I have no problem quitting. I've quit hundreds of times. I'm that guy that swear to God I'm not doing this anymore. Go to work. I'm borrowing money for cigarettes and lunch. And I'm not doing this anymore. I swear when I get paid on Friday, I'm buying groceries. I'm going to get us pay the bills, get us out of this motel. I'm going to get diapers and milk, and I'm going to be a dad. And something happens to me when they put that paycheck in my hand. I have a psychic change. I say, well, I've worked hard this week. Maybe just a couple drinks on the way home. So here's what it looked like in my life. I would come to in that motel room, and maybe some of you remember what this feeling was like. Cracking your eyelids open after a binge. I was a binge guy, man. I would, like I said, I don't stop. I run out or pass out. And I would crack my eyelids open. And the first thought in my mind, see, I'm a want-to-die alcoholic. First thought in my mind was, damn, I'm not dead. I wasn't suicidal, but I did not want to wake up in my life anymore. It had spun so far out of control, and their problems mount up on them, their human problems, and seem astonishingly difficult to solve. I was not getting out of this. And I kept telling myself the lie. I kept buying the lie, and I would crack my eyelids open. And then Bill says in his story, the remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the morning after are unforgettable. That's why I'm here. It's unforgettable. And that feeling would be on me. The guilt, the shame, and the remorse. And then I would look at my little boy in that crib, and I'd stroll over to him with tears in my eyes. And I would say, I'm going to get us out of this. I swear to God, I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to turn my life around. I mean it. And I meant it with all my heart. But I don't know. Page 24 in the big book says there comes a point in our drinking where the strongest desire to stop drinking is absolutely no avail. My sponsor explained that to me. He said, wanting to stop drinking has no effect on stopping drinking. And then a few hours would go by. And that firm resolution to stop, like it talks about in the doctor's opinion. Anybody ever wonder why? And I couldn't figure it out. That feeling just evaporates. Sometimes after a few hours, sometimes after a few minutes. Man, I just feel so bad. I just need a couple drinks, take the edge off, then and I'd have those 2 drinks and I'd say something like this. What the hell? All the good jobs are taken. Tomorrow I'll get up real early. Go get that job. Straighten my life out. And I didn't want to be that dad. I did not grow up to be that dad. I was there the day that little boy was born. 2 years earlier, we had a little home in Port St. Lucie, Florida. I had a good job. I had a car. I had established credit, and I bought a house. I bought a car. We were going to be a family. This little boy was going to be, I was 38 years old. This little boy was going to help me to grow up. I thought it was going to save me. And I remember in the hospital, they put that little boy in my hands, and for the first time in my life, I fell in love with another human being. It was like a switch went off in my life. And I looked at that little boy, I started to cry like a baby. And I made him all the promises probably every parent makes their child. I said, you're going to know you're loved. We're going to be able to walk down the street arm in arm. I'm going to put my arm around you. I'm going to tell you I love you. We're going to have so much fun. I'm going to coach you in baseball and basketball and football. And it's going to be so good. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart. There was a person, first time in my life I've ever loved another person. And I put that little boy down in the crib and I walked into the waiting room. And a friend of mine said, let's have a drink to celebrate the birth of your son. I don't know alcohol. I don't know what alcoholism looks like. I've never been exposed to it. 8 days later, I showed up. 8 days later. Strongest emotion in the world. The love of a child. No human power can relieve this alcoholism. My sponsor gave me the test. Do the test. You ever had any financial problems because of alcohol or drugs? Well, yeah. How about legal problems? Well, yeah, that too. And how about relationship problems? You ever had any of those? Yeah. How about legal problems? Yeah. How about health? I go down the list, check them all. None of those things could stop me. No human power. And it spun out of control. And 2 years later, we snuck out of that house in the middle of the night in an old beat-up car. They had repossessed the other cars. They foreclosed on that house and went down to Fort Lauderdale in the hopes of a job that somebody who hadn't seen me in a few years. Because I used to be a good salesman. I know this is hard to believe, but I was a car salesman. Now, listen, through the grace of God and the fellowship of AA, I've not found it necessary to sell a car today. I'm a recovering car salesman. And what happened was we ended up in that motel, and they gave me a car and they gave me a bonus before I started. I'm calling in sick to a job I've never been to. And I take meetings into treatment centers and in detox and into a jail. And these guys, they always talk about, well, what's different this time? You hear that question posed a lot. What's different? What's going to be different this time? All I can tell you is what happened to me on September 11th that didn't happen to me before. And I cracked my eyelids open. Damn, I'm not dead. Guilt, shame, remorse, stroll over to the crib, start crying. I said the words came out of my mouth. I said, I'm done with this. I'm going to get us out of this motel. And before I could finish, there was a voice in my head, in my own voice, that said, no, you're not. And for the first time, I couldn't buy the lie. See, I always start drinking on the lie. I'm going to get the great obsession of every alcoholic is that one day he will beat the game. This can't be killing me. That day, I was defeated. And I knew I was going to die. And I knew I wasn't going to stop. No human power was going to stop me. That was it. And I made some great decisions that day. I didn't think they were great, but they turned out to be great. It's funny, in Alcoholics Anonymous, some of the worst days of your life turn out to be the best days. I remember when I hadn't paid income tax in 20 years, when I met my sponsor, they seized my first, I started a bank account, like I'm somebody responsible. I hadn't had a bank account since I was a paper boy. And I had this little money, and the IRS came and seized my bank account. And I called my sponsor, and he says, "Oh, this is great. You're in for a huge spiritual growth spurt." That was his answer to a lot of things. And I go to that. I can't buy the lie that day. See, I've been treating my alcoholism by pretending to be a non-alcoholic. That's what did it to me. I would get up and I would say that lie. Today I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to go to job, go to work, pay the bills, bring some groceries home. I'm going to be a dad. That's it. I'm going to turn my life around. God, I said that so many times. I couldn't see the lie. And we always talk about hitting bottom, and I believe that was my bottom up until now. And for me, what that meant is that reality pierced the delusion. I couldn't buy the lie anymore, and I knew the truth. Now, I didn't know, but when I finally came here, Bill, on page 7 and 8 in the big book, his story sounds a lot similar to what happened, because I didn't surrender to get sober. And that's the day before. And here's the decision I made on September 11th, 1990. I knew I was going to drink again no matter what. And I said, the hell with it. I'm done waking up and feeling guilty. I'm going to quit quitting. That was the decision I made. I'm going to do whatever it takes to drink and stay high for the rest of my life. I don't care. And not whatever little morals I might have had or things lines that I wouldn't have crossed, I said, I'm going to cross, and I don't care. I just want to hurry up the process. And I knew it wouldn't take long because I knew I was going to die either in the gutter or in jail, and it wasn't long. I was not in very good health. And that's the decision I made. My day before my sobriety date. You go figure. And what happened was I remember sitting there that night. Now, that's the best of my ability. That's where my best thinking took me, is to that motel room on September 11th, 1990. I sat there in a stupor one more night on September 11th, my little boy wandering around trying to get my attention. But I was just too drunk and too high to give him any attention. And I had checked out. Bill says on page 7 and 8, and here's what he says, so this is the curtain, the end, it seems. So I was to go on joining the endless procession of sots that had gone on before me. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions, how dark it is before the dawn. He says, alcohol was my master. That's exactly what I felt like that day. I can't buy this. I'm not going to. It's kind of like falling off a skyscraper, and on the way down you're going, so this is how it ends. That's how sure I was that day. And now let me tell you what God did, or whatever you want to call him. But, when I talk about God, before I go into this, let me tell you, if whatever prejudice you may have, you can call him whatever you want to, but I love it. We've heard the message over and over again by everybody that's shared. And I heard it today when Georgia was talking about the universe. Once you've committed to be here, the universe aligns itself to help you stay here, even against your will. You have to turn your back on it. And I don't know what you want to call it, but let me tell you, we get too smart. We think we're so smart. This is a disease. This is an insanity. The obsession of the mind is insanity. Number one symptom of insanity is you think you're smart. I bet you think you're smart. I think I'm smart. Thank God I know better most of the time. And so what happened is you take any little 3-year-old child in the world and you tell them about God. They don't ever argue. They don't ever debate. They accept it and they love that principle, that idea, like Bill says, the God idea worked. Any 3-year-old child. We told our kids about it. They want to start praying with other people. They just accept. They don't know who God is. They don't need an explanation. They don't need a description. Take any 3-year-old kid in the world. You tell them, say, listen, December 24th, there's this guy that flies around the world in a sled, and he's going to come and bring toys to your house. He's going to come down your chimney, even if you don't have one. He's going to come down your chimney, and he's going to leave some toys for you. There isn't a 3-year-old kid in the world that's going to go, nah, that sounds like bullshit. But we do. Who in the heck? We're the ones that you suck at. Like Sandy Beach tells a story. I'm going to get off track here a little bit, so we'll get back around in a couple of hours. No, Sandy Beach told this story once, and I loved it. His home group was in the downtown clubhouse, the Yana group in downtown Tampa. And anybody who's ever met Sandy knows he's kind of like a very conservative, grandfatherly looking man, very non-threatening, horn-rimmed glasses, just the sweetest guy in the world. Khaki pants, blue button-down shirts. And these, you know what a clubhouse looks like. Everybody's standing out front. There's nothing but tattoos, piercings, styrofoam, and nicotine. Right? And he pulls up across the street from the club, and everybody waves at him. They're all out there. And there's a little lady walking her dog who lived in the condo across the street. She sees him, and she felt non-threatened enough to ask him. She says, excuse me, sir, but can you tell me what goes on over there? And because she couldn't figure it out. We are people who normally would not mix. Right, Ben? No. And he didn't want to blow our anonymity, so he told her, he thought about it for a minute, he said, we're people who have trouble living. And she didn't know what to make of it, and he said goodbye, and he went into the room. And during the meeting, he shared that. He says, I didn't want to blow your anonymity, so I told this lady that we're people who have trouble living. And of course, some guy goes, man, I wish you would have told her I was an alcoholic. We don't know what the friggin' problem is. That's my problem. I'm that guy that goes to the gym. When I get up from the machine, I take the pin and I move it down so it looks like I've been lifting heavier weights. Now, I may not do it all the time, but I want to. Right? And so it's like this talk. I just want credit for the talk. I don't want to do it. And where was I, Billy? No. Anyway, I'm sitting in that motel room one more night in a stupor, and there was a knock on the door. And I believe God showed up. Just me. I'm done arguing. I'm done. I've resigned from the debating society. If you guys tell me, I kind of try to follow what the program says as best I can. As you'll hear, I've had some issues even in sobriety. And now there was, at this stage of your drinking, you do not open the door. You're living in a Skid Row motel room. There's tape on the peephole, so no light can escape, right? You hear a sound and you're going, I mean, even if I'm alone, if I hear a noise, I go, shh. But that night I got up and I opened the door without looking. And I wondered after I got sober why I did that. And I know why I did it today. Because of what I had finally surrendered to this disease, I didn't have anything to hide. I didn't have to pretend to be a non-alcoholic anymore. I knew what I was. And I opened that door. And what seemed at first a flimsy reed proved the loving hand of God. Proved to be the loving hand of God. And I believe that's what happened that night. God walked in. He was short, fat, and bald. Looked a lot like my younger brother. And he didn't lecture me like we don't do in here. He didn't say, look what you're doing to your son, but look what you're doing to yourself. He didn't speak, but I could see the horror in his eyes. I could see my life through his eyes. And all he did was say, listen, if you want. And I believe these words were doing. He tugged on the last moral fiber that I think was attached. We come in here, we're hanging by a thread. And if you stay, the thread doesn't break. And he tugged on that last moral thread, and I believe what he said was divinely inspired. He said, here's my phone number. If you want, I will watch your son while you get help. Now, I didn't want help, but I didn't want my son to come with me. I knew that there was no stops, no holds barred from now on. And I thought, okay. And on September 12th, I came to, and I made that phone call. I used that phone number. And that's where now I didn't know about Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know anybody. I never met anybody in AA. I had no clue what alcoholism looked like, but I had heard of treatment. I didn't know what it was. I knew that you go in, and I'd heard it was 30 days, and they do some sort of treatment. I couldn't even imagine what the treatment was. Maybe they give you something to take. Maybe they give you a suppository, something, right? And treat me. And I said, all right, and I'll go to treatment, because it was the only thing I had heard of. And, of course, I'm looking for the Betty Ford Center. I want the Olympic pool, the weight room. Right? 30 days, I'll be in good shape. I'll be ready for a real run. And unfortunately, they don't take indigents. They finally found a place. It was an old apartment building in the hood in Miami that the United Way had converted into a treatment center for homeless people and for indigents. And they had a bed. And on 5 days later, they said, we got a bed for you. And I went down there, and they gave me the quiz, and they put me in this. On September 17th was my first day in that treatment center. That was my 40th birthday. September 17th, 1990, on my 40th birthday, I'm sitting in the wallowing in the failure of my life. Worst day of my life, I thought. And I'm in this treatment center. There's 50 people in there. They're all basically either out of jail or homeless. And I'm sitting there trying to be the cool guy in the, I got to be the cool guy in the treatment center. And we're standing outside smoking, and we were real men. We didn't vape back then. We smoked. And this guy pulls up, and I'm telling these guys, you know who I am? I used to own a bar on South Beach, and I did. And I said, they used to call me Miami Joe. Nobody called me Miami Joe. I called me Miami. How lame are you to give yourself a nickname, right? And they're not impressed. These guys, they're not impressed at all, right? And I'll never forget, this guy pulls up, and it was an evening, and he pulls up, and he's got a collared shirt on and pressed pants. He's 27 years old, and he's clean. And, in AA, we say, if you want what we have, well, he had what I wanted. He had a full pack of Marlboro Reds and a watch. If I could have got my hands on those, I'd be gone, right? And I thought, what is this guy doing here on a Friday night in Miami? Miami's it's like a frontier town back then. And I thought, well, I wonder what they're paying this guy. But I could do this gig, right? I'm already, from my first day in treatment, I think I should be working there. They made me wear a sign for 30 days that said, I am not a counselor. True story. He came in, and there were probably 50 of us in that room, and he shared with everybody. He said, listen, there were 50 of you. He says, I want to tell you, you never have to take another drink or drug again if you don't want to. Well, I knew that was crap, because I had not wanted to for a while. But he said something that got my attention. He said, you never have to feel the way you feel tonight again. And think about it. We left that feeling when we walked into these rooms. We say in Alcoholics Anonymous, don't leave till the miracle happens. I believe the miracle happens the moment you walk in the room. Now, you have to turn your back on it, and you're the last one to know it. But the truth is you take a guy who could not stop, and he comes into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, no sponsor, no steps, and all of a sudden he's got 7 days. That's a miracle. That's all Bill calls this thing. He said, never mind my thoughts about miracles. When he was looking at Ebby, here sat a miracle directly across from me. The certain fact that our higher power, that God has entered into our hearts and lives in a way that is indeed miraculous. In the foreword to the second edition, what has happened here is a wholesale miracle. Go through the book and just look at how many times he calls this a miracle. That's the guy who founded it, and he knows what this is. It's nothing more than a miracle. I tell my kids, don't forget the God factor. Just when you think things can't get worse, don't forget the God factor. And so I'm in this treatment center. Then he said something that got my attention. He said, there were 50 of us in there. And he said, At the end of 6 months, I go, I won't be here in 6 months. But he goes, at the end of 6 months, he said, there won't be 5 of you left. And he was right. There were 2 of us. Now, I don't know why I was one, but I was one. I got out of that treatment center 6 months later, and not trying to be, they had asked me to leave a couple times. I'm not leaving. It's like, if my wife ever left me, a therapist said, what would you do if your wife left you? I'd go with her. So what happened was I got out of that treatment center. I went where every good 40-year-old alcoholic goes. Mom, I'm home. Now, my folks had a little place. They lived in Niagara Falls. That's where I grew up. But they had a winter place down in Central Florida, and a little adult retirement community. It's like if Florida was going to get an enema, it's where they'd insert the tube. You know, you got to be 1,000 years old to live there. And I'm sitting there. My first day out of treatment was March 17th, 1991, and I'm smoking, not vaping, and sitting there and this little old man is next door watering his lawn. Talk about a flimsy reed. And this little guy comes, I could see him kind of working his way over to me. And hi, my name's Frank. Hey, Frank, how are you? And he goes, I hear you had some trouble with alcohol. Oh, Mom's been talking, huh? He said, would you like to go to an AA meeting tonight? I thought about it, and I said, well, it's either stay home and watch Murder, She Wrote with Mom, or go to an AA meeting. And sure. And I'm going to describe something that happens in here. And probably most of us have been the beneficiary of this. He said, I'll pick you up at 7:15. 7:15, that little car was sitting outside. He never beeped the horn. He never came and pounded on the door. He just sat there patiently waiting for me to come out. He'd only met me one time. Just talked to me briefly for a couple minutes. I got in his car. We drove off to the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that man taught me the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm here today because, like most of us, the kindness of strangers. In case you didn't recognize what that is, it's called unconditional love. See, I have newcomers that think, you're supposed to help me. Oh, really? Let me recommend a new sponsor for you. We drove off to the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was a retirement area. I mean, there were 50 people at this meeting. You couldn't put together a whole set of teeth. And there, if you want what we have, you know, you see them here, bib overalls, right? And I'm like, I don't want a damn thing you have. Not a damn thing. I would sit there with my arms crossed and go, geez, I just want to shoplift a little recovery and get out of here. I need to get back to South Beach where I belong. And but you didn't throw me out. And that's really, I didn't learn about alcoholism in that treatment center. I learned about it after I got out. And I learned about it driving to this meeting with Frank. And I didn't think, and if you're looking for a sponsor you can relate to, let me tell you, here's what Frank had. He was married to the same woman for 50 years at the time, raised 5 kids, living in a manufactured home community in Central Florida, and was a retired postman. And drove a Buick. He had nothing I wanted. Nothing. That man sponsored me for 31 years till he passed away. He worked at Intergroup and answered the phones, and every day when he would pick me up, we'd go to a meeting every night. I'd go, God, Frank, don't you ever take a damn day off? And he didn't. And we'd go to meetings, and he'd drive far away, and we'd talk about AA, and he set me free. He said, I'm going to tell you, you're a smart guy. I'm going to tell you he used to say, I want you to do me a favor. Just pretend you're dumb. But then he would say, just long enough till you know you are. And he'd say, you're a smart guy. Let me tell you the first 3 steps in a language you can understand. Here's step 1. You're screwed. And I what? He goes, yeah. If you're not 100% convinced you'll drink again, you'll drink again. And it is. I will. My friends prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, a day would come when I would drink again. That's what it says in our literature. And I really thought it was, I thought about it. I said, well, if that's the case, Jesus, if I'm going to drink again, man, and I'm screwed, it sounds like it's going to take a friggin' miracle. He said, you're right, that's step 2. And that's what it is. And he says, and step 3 is what the hell, I'll try it. It's real simple stuff. We have a lot of step technicians today. But the truth is we're men and women trying to be better men and women. A much important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. And he set me free with God. He goes, I want you to start praying. Frank, I don't know about praying. He said, listen, I don't mean you have to believe in God. You do not have to believe in God. He said, what you have to do is start acting like a person would act if he believed in God. The action is more important than the belief. The belief separates us. The action unites us. Right? Who can resist unconditional love? And so he was that guy. We'd go to meetings, and Frank worked at Intergroup answering the phone. So every time we'd go to a meeting, we were picking up a new guy. We were always on a 12-step call. Right? And my wife, Tammy, worked at Intergroup with him. He introduced me to her, so I thought the relationship was sanctioned by the Pope. Right? At 2 years sober, I met Tammy, and I started stalking her. I became an AA stalker, and some of you know what that's like. And we fell madly in love. I went through the steps with Frank as best I could. They were a pretty poor version of it. I did a 4th and 5th, but it wasn't a causes and conditions. It was a conditions 4th step and 5th step. So if you address the conditions but don't get to the causes, the conditions grow back after a period of time. But I thought this was great. I thought all my problems were the stuff that as a result of my alcoholism. I didn't realize they were the stuff that was inside. And that alcohol was but a symptom. It was really my solution to a maladjusted life. And all that, we drink, full flight from reality. I don't drink to escape. I drink to show up. What do you mean? I had no concept of what was going on here. You can't get to my age and be as dumb as I was. And but Tammy had 2 kids. I had got custody of my son because his mom never did get sober and has been in and out of prison, and that's another story. But we were both single parents. We fell madly in love, had a big AA wedding. And I thought 2 years sober. At 4 years, we got married, right? And I thought, I'm qualified to be in a relationship. I'm 4 years sober. And I didn't know you're only qualified to learn how to be in a relationship. Because at the first sign of dark clouds, I think there's something wrong with this. Again, there's something wrong with this marriage. We got married, and things started to happen in my life. I started to get promoted, and wonderful things started happening. And when you stop committing felonies on a daily basis, and you show up for work, people like you. And I started to get promoted and got a bigger and better job. And then I got this job offer down back in South Florida, where everybody told me not to go. Away from my sponsor, away from my support group, but it was the best job I'd ever been offered. It was running a big luxury car dealership, and I was going to be the general manager. I'm not qualified to do it, but like my sponsor says, we interview well, and I interviewed well, and I got the job, and I'm working 12, 14 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, and I'm coming home, and I'm tired, and I'm exhausted, and I'm not going to AA anymore. The alcohol, on page, I think it's 66, the alcoholic insanity returns, and then we drink, and we drink again. The insanity was back in my life. And I uprooted that family, took them down to South Florida against their will, and I'm coming home, I'm tired, exhausted, I'm putting a cardboard cutout of a dad and a cardboard cutout of a husband. I think I'm fooling them, and I'm not. And I'm doing things I shouldn't be doing. I start getting a little dishonest. I start wanting to be other places and do other things. And we start fighting. What happened to that beautiful girl, that sweet woman that I married? So I start hiding money, just in case this thing doesn't work out. When you're not 100% in, you think you're fooling somebody? They know you're not 100% in. They know it. They may not be able to. See, if you're an alcoholic like me, we defy you to call me a liar. I'll tell you such a story. I defy you to say I'm lying. And I came home after about a year of doing this. And she goes, I want a divorce. What? Look at what I've done for you. And I was shocked. And I left that house with my little boy in tow. And if you're the one leaving the house, let me tell you, it's not your house. Okay? And we left that house, and she said to me one thing on the way out the door. I didn't hear it when she said it, but I heard it later. She said, can't you see that all your relationships end the same? And I couldn't see it. I was doing alcoholic stuff without the alcohol. Crackhead stuff without the crack. I got a little apartment, but I was so enraged and so angry, and this was my second surrender in Alcoholics. And I was so angry and so upset, and I was, first time in my life, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. It affected my job. Within a month, they fired me from the best job I ever had. Now, I'm 6 years old, and I can't go to AA. She got custody of AA. Right? I mean, if you know Tammy, I can't go show up at a meeting and pretend that it was her fault. Everybody knows, oh, here's that dirt bag. And so I'm going to a meeting here, a meeting there. I don't know anybody. I'm sitting in the back. And I'm so angry. I'm actually, first time in my life, I wanted to look for the end. I wished for the end. I had suicidal thoughts. And finally, I found a bar that caught my attention, and I want to drink more than I want to stay sober. 6 years sober, and I can't go share this at a meeting. And the bar caught my attention because it had a name that was real attractive. It said Bar. Parking lot in the back, opens at 8 in the morning. I can be Miami Joe in there for a while. And I drove by that bar 6 days in a row. But it's hard to drink when you got 6 years sober. You get these butterflies in your stomach because I had unworked the steps all the way to step one. But I had a step one experience that was so... There is no retreat when you have a true step one experience. There's no retreat. There's nothing to go back. Guys that think they're going back out, you know what they think the problem is? Technique. I'm going to go back out. It was a technique problem. I'm going to manage a little bit better when I go back out. I knew it wasn't technique. I knew that if I took a drink, my lifestyle was going to change. The two alternatives were reality in my life. But I didn't care. I was in so much pain. I just wanted relief. And I drove by. I left my little boy asleep in the back room on the seventh day. I got up and cursed God, and I drove across town to that bar, and I sat out front of that bar, and I was underneath the street light, and I got butterflies in my stomach because I know my lifestyle is about to change. And I probably wouldn't have made it back home to my son. And I look over, and underneath the street light on a side street is a broken down van with its hood up. One more time, the flimsy reed. And I see the front license plate in the light, and it said, "Have you prayed today?" And I don't know why, but I said the serenity prayer. And I didn't go into that bar. I wanted to, but I drove back across town to a meeting I'd been to one time a year earlier. And I walked in the back, and I sat in the back of the room. That's exactly what happened. And it was the month of September, my anniversary month. And the guy's at the podium like this. There's about that many people at the meeting. He says, "Tonight's anniversary night. Is there anyone celebrating an anniversary in the month of September?" And like an idiot, I raised my hand. He says, "Here's what we do. We have about 5 or 6 celebrants. They all come up and share how they stayed sober for about 5-10 minutes. Since we have a visitor, why don't you start us off?" Oh, yeah, real funny. Yeah, it was hysterical that night. And I'm like, what? But being a good car salesman, I thought, okay. And I walked up and I got behind the podium and I turned around and I looked out and I saw your face. And I couldn't speak. And I stood there for what seemed like forever. And I started to cry. And then shortly after I started to sob. And I just stood there crying. And finally the words came out of my mouth, "I'm lost. I need help. I don't know how to do this anymore." Once again, the kindness of strangers. 2 men came and took me off the stage and took me back into the kitchen. They sat with me till 11:30 that night. I didn't know these 2 men. Now, I know why they took me off the stage. The treatment center had brought the van and all the newcomers were in the front row. I could just hear them go, "That's not how it is at 6 years sober." He's just humble. And those guys, like the old joke, we'll show you one more time. They got me involved again, against my will. I mean, I belly ached at every meeting for the next 3 months. I was like the guy feeling sorry for himself. But they got me involved again, going to treatment centers and detoxes, and took me through the steps again at a deeper level than I'd ever been. And they started to change my life. I had a spiritual awakening. And I started sponsoring guys again, and things changed. And under the direction of a sponsor, I couldn't go back to the car business because I had my little boy and I couldn't do the hours. So my sponsor said, why don't you go get a crummy job, but do a good job at it? All right. And I was 47 years old. I know I'm not going to be discovered anymore, right? The bottom had fallen out, but I was humbled at gunpoint. I'm only humbled at gunpoint. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And I went out. He said, and then you can be a good dad. You can take your son to school and pick him up from school every day. Have dinner with him. And I did that. I took my son to school every day and picked him up every day. We had dinner every night. It was stir fry. I only knew how to make stir fry. It was either chicken or beef. But I coached him that year in Little League and baseball and basketball and football. And I learned how to be a dad. My son will tell you that was the best year of his life. He shared that in a counseling session in treatment. And it was. I learned how to be a dad. And then I took what the book says and I applied it to my work. See, there was no more separation of church and state. God, I had failed in every area of my life without alcohol or drugs. I couldn't deny it. I couldn't blame it on the alcohol and drugs. I knew what the real problem was. And so I did what the 11th step talks about. And it says we go to work and use it as a means of service, not as a way to make money, but as a means of service. And I took that job, that crummy job, and I thought, I'm willing to do whatever it is. I'll be the best shelf stocker, potato chip shelf stocker in the world. See, and things started to change. I realized success is not some destination. It's how you do what you're doing right now. It's here, right now. And the craziest thing happened to me. When I did that, I fell in love with that job. And I've never had to work a day in my life since. And then my wife and I ran into each other about a year and a half later at a conference. We hadn't communicated or talked, and we started dating. And like the book says, we knew for it to work better, if we were going to be together, it had to be on a different basis. And I knew that, see, my basis for being in a relationship was 50-50. That's a pretty good foundation, right? 50-50. Well, that's not for an alcoholic like me. It's like justifiable anger. It doesn't work for us. 50-50 doesn't work for me, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm the one counting. I'm keeping score. I'm going to let you know when your 50's in. And if you're short, I'm going to be the first one to tell you. It's like the old, you show me yours, I'll show you mine, but you go first. And that's what happened. And things started to change. And we got remarried, and we just celebrated 26 years, 26 years. And then God saw fit to give the worst parent in the world another opportunity. At 48 years old, we had twin boys. And those boys know they're loved. And they are the greatest boys. We have so much fun. They love being with us. We're building a house. My wife wants to build a house so the kids will come home and live. And they're married. She wants them to come home and live, right? But I'm okay with that. The men in this room changed my life. The men in this room I respect and admire, and I've watched you walk, especially Scott, wherever you're at, Scott Lee. And I don't know why, but, and his footprint is all over this place. I'm going to tell you, when I went to that treatment center, I'm going to close with this. This will only take about 20 minutes. No. I'm going to close with this. I went to that treatment center, and they wouldn't let you speak. In the morning meetings, we had a big meeting, and you're not allowed to speak or say anything. They gave you something to memorize. They would give you here. Until you can stand up in front of the whole treatment center and recite this, you can't speak. So after a few days, I memorized it, and this is what it says. And I didn't realize what it said back then, but I do now. And I'm going to tell you what it said. Listen to it. It's us. It's here. It says, we are here because there is no refuge, finally, from ourselves. Until a person confronts himself in the eyes and hearts of others, he is running. Until he suffers them to share his secrets, he has no safety from them. Afraid to be known, he can know neither himself nor any other. He will be alone. But where else but in this common ground can we find such a mirror? Here together a person can at last appear clearly to himself, not as the giant of his dreams, nor the dwarf of his fears, but as a man, part of a whole, with his share in its purpose. Thank you. Love you.